There are two possible ways we can live our lives. One is physically, and the other is spiritually. To live my life physically means I live from the outside in. The outer physical world, including this physical body, completely shapes what I consider quality of life, completely shapes my sense of self, my sense of value, and my source of attainment. But to live spiritually means to live from the inside out. That quality of life begins on the inside. My sense of self, my sense of value, my source of attainment is all from the inside. When I live from the outside in, I'm extremely dependent on the outer world, what people are doing, what situations are unfolding, for my sense of peace and happiness, my sense of contentment, satisfaction. But when I live from the inside out, I'm free. Whatever others are doing, whatever situations are unfolding, my peace and happiness are not dependent on any of that. I understand that my happiness, my contentment is completely and totally a result of my inner world. And so I'm motivated to come inside, to look inwards, and assess the state of my inner world. Especially the foundation, the seed of my inner world, which is awareness of self. Am I rooted in a sense of self that is meaningful, valuable, stable, rich, powerful? Or is that seed of self fragile, vulnerable, insecure, taking time to assess the very foundation of my inner world as I choose to live spiritually? Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. And tonight's topic is the power of contentment. So it was lovely listening to the commentary in terms of what contentment means. I've heard from someone, this is way before being in the study, that she didn't like that word. She said it made it sound like you had to settle for things. So perhaps maybe we also have very outside in experience of what contentment means. So perhaps when you had shared what this topic would be about, one question came to mind, which came from a student of Raja Yoga in an interview, and she was sharing that there are some souls, they're just born content. They're just always happy with everything. And how does that work in terms of someone who's wanting to study Raja Yoga because they're grappling with contentment?
Om Shanti. Yes, I always find it interesting when we say that someone's naturally content without seeming to have to make any effort. And it reminds me a bit when I was in dance school. There were some students, we say gifted, they just seem to have all the accoutrements of a ballet dancer. And so we'd say they're lucky, they don't have to make any effort, they just seem to. And I was remembering one such soul, and she was very young, I think she was 10 or 11, and she was accepted into our national ballet school here in Canada. Um, Very young, of course, and yeah, I mean, really seemed very natural for her, everything. And she went, and after a few months, she came back to Calgary. She left because she had an injury. So, in this study, we talk about this idea of virtues, divine virtues, and godly virtues. And many have virtues or specialities. Um, Divine virtues are those that are based on purity. They're constant and they happen in the perfect world. So we don't really need to talk about those. But godly virtues are interesting. This idea, and this is where power comes in, this idea of being able to maintain that virtue no matter what. So these people who we say are content or loving, all that, I am almost positive that under the right conditions, that virtue would abandon them. Just as when the soul went to dance school, very gifted, but again, just the demands of very different training, and landed up with an injury. And so, in fact, those who it seems natural maybe even have to take greater care sometimes. So, are they content if something happens to a family member? Are they content if they lose all their belongings, they're robbed? Are they still content? So, this power of contentment, that there is content, and it's very important actually because we do live in very chaotic times. It's wonderful for those who are gifted with natural contentment. Don't get me wrong, but somehow I feel sometimes spirituality equals the playing field, in that we're looking at a type of stage, which is, we use this word that no one likes, constant. So that means we're all kind of in the same boat to develop that kind of consistency.
For someone who is struggling with contentment or some sort of weakness, some sort of Achilles heel, sometimes we use that word, and they really were dedicated to just focus on self progress. I know we're talking about contentment in this particular topic, but if they really were dedicated and really focusing on themselves consistently, what would then be the implications for them, especially when there's a lot of inner perception? Perhaps maybe outer perception doesn't matter, but inner perception that it's as if they have a disadvantage.
You seem to come back to this topic often. um, I remember once someone, kind of a similar scenario. It's almost, we described it as almost there's a headwind blowing at you all the time rather than those who do not have that kind of headwind. Obviously, if the headwind was to be removed, they would actually be stronger than those who have been training without the headwind. So, if someone, this is such a game of attitude. It really is that, and this is why contentment has sort of fascinated me. It really is about looking at the self, no one else, and completely understanding the self and understanding the story of the self. And that's what I work with. I am really competing against myself. So then the words advantage, disadvantage don't, they really kind of are words that have to do relative to someone else. But I'm looking at my own fortune, my own part. And if I've really understood how the story works, my story is perfect for my development over time. And once I start to have this kind of attitude, I remove the headwind. It's coming from my own attitude, that kind of resistance or feeling that I'm a disadvantage is actually an attitude. I'm not looking at things really clearly.
One of the reasons why that inspired this question was because remember when I was quite young hearing about Daddy Janky, and she had shared that she came into the study late with respect to her classmates in the study. And she said that I feel like lost, I missed out. I'm trying to catch up. And for some reason that stayed with me in the sense like maybe in a negative way. Like, is there a sense of not competition, ego, but like that feeling of disadvantage? And of course, it's all speculation. I wonder if that feeling eventually went away when she really started to gain her sense of self-respect, because she had shared when she was younger. She said that I'm very different from what you see me now in terms of, the weaknesses that she was facing. So I guess in terms of the power of contentment, what then, what is the relationship between purity and contentment? And yes, she is one example, but it's true. If I'm still using some sort of reference point to be able to study, that's a limited reference point, which is definitely in contrast to the commentary that was shared. I wonder if in a subtle way, still one is sort of in bondage, I suppose.
Yes, if we finish the story with Daddy Janky, I mean, she said, yes, I seem to have come later than everyone, but then she didn't stay stuck there. She did what she felt she needed to do. And ultimately, the self respect is what I need to do to fully develop myself, not to catch up with others, but to fully develop myself. This is always this internal, again, these attitudes that I have towards the self and others and what's going on are so critical. I really enjoyed, I've been thinking about it a lot since I heard it. And it was nice to hear because it's what I was feeling inside around contentment. That if you're engaged in something and you're feeling discontent, then the idea is you should stop doing that thing. And what was said today, which I completely agree, my own feeling too, if I'm engaged in something and I feel discontent, stop being discontent. Don't stop doing it. Stop being discontent. It's very subtle, right? That I'm not quite, the problem is always within the self. What if my situation is different from someone else? How I interpret that, what conclusion I come to, isn't based on facts outside. It's based on stuff within myself. Um, we saw that wonderful race. I don't know, maybe the 800 race where they're running and one of the sisters falls down and seems injured. I mean, it's not a long race. And you're like, it's over. It's over for her. It's completely over. And I mean, I'm sure you can guess how this goes. She gets up, starts to run. I mean, there's a massive gap to make up. You want to talk about disadvantage, and she wins the race. I don't know. It must have been superhuman because that's crazy. If anyone's done middle distance running, they know that's crazy. But yeah, she ran the race. So what happened in her head? That's all that matters is what happened in her head. She even, I'm positive to do what she did, she surpassed her personal best in terms of the speed that she was running. Not the time she got, obviously, but the speed that she was running. So it's such a thing inside. So I love this idea that if you're engaged in something and you're feeling a little disgruntled or whatever, don't think it's necessarily the thing. The first place I need to look is at my own attitudes, what's going on inside.
Now we often, for those who've taken Raja Yoga, you hear about uh, the importance of the power of understanding. We call it knowledge, and then there's the power of yoga, power of experiencing what I'm learning about. That both of them are required for contentment. Can you share about these two aspects of? Because you say, okay, don't. It's not about stopping that thing. You have to stop being discontent. I wonder if souls go, okay, great. How do I do that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what's Rajaga knowledge does really, it's allowing me to see things in a different way. It's quite powerful that there's a lot that we're not seeing within the self because we've lost this, our what we call the third eye, the capacity to see the invisible stuff. So seeing things in a different way is really what the knowledge affords me. And when I do, it unlocks. I know for myself, um, if I've got if I'm seeing things a certain way that maybe is creating heaviness or uncertainty, it actually drains my energy and things are in labor. The moment I see things in a different way and it unlocks, I'm energized. So, how I see things has a lot to do with the enthusiasm and the solution, being able to see solutions. Um, Yoga is really about removing or melting that which is sabotaging the self. So, although I might see things, I have created a lot of stuff inside during the time that I was seeing things in a very limited way, especially the self. So yoga really helps to remove all the darkness, all the heaviness, all the obstacles, all the self-sabotage in the soul, so that it's just pure me, and I get to fly, if you will, constant enthusiasm, constant contentment. So they both are very important. One is helping me to connect with who I am. The other is removing that which is not me.
Just because I was reflecting about this, about even less, about just a little over an hour ago. What what do you feel happens if I'm imbalanced? I'm really focused on the power of yoga, or I'm really focused on the power of knowledge, and it's a bit imbalanced on the other side.
Sometimes I think about knowledge as theory and yoga as practical or experience. So I think if we use those words, we can see what would happen with an imbalance. So I have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, but it's very frustrating because I'm not actually implementing it. I'm not actually experiencing it. Or the other side where I'm just so much in silence, so much deep, but I don't have any wisdom to kind of protect it. So I kind of need both. And in some ways, the knowledge is helping me to have yoga. And the more yoga I have, the better my understanding of the knowledge. So to me, they work together very, very deeply. And it's the same as in fitness. Um, I get, we get professional development, we get these lecture style classes where we learn things, which is wonderful. And then the idea is we take it into the field and we play with what we've learned, we experiment. And then based on experiment, when I come back into these lecture style, I have a much more mature, deeper understanding of what's being talked about. So these two things really, really work together.
So it's interesting you were talking about these, just the impact of both of them. And you were talking about knowledge that's required to reframe things. Is it about reframing how I see it myself? Or is it also about reframing how I see others? Are they connected? Can I just focus on one and what happens if I do?
Yeah, it's all one frame. Me, other situations, it's all in one frame. Again, the best example that we use very often is of an actor in a play. If I forget I'm an actor in a play, I have a very disturbing experience of the play because I think that's what's really going on. But if I reframe and remember, oh, yeah, 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 it's a play and I'm an actor in a play, I'm obviously going to see others as actors in the play too. I'm going to see the situation as props. Like the whole thing is a package deal. It's not that I'm an actor in a play, but the rest of them are really those people. We're all actors. So my feelings for everything completely change when I reframe. But it's interesting to realize that that reframing starts with the self, with my own consciousness, and then it will ripple out to everything else.
So perhaps just this aspect of power, of contentment you had shared. Perhaps I could share about what that is. Or is it in terms of power that if I just feel myself and that power can affect me at such different levels and how that can also affect others.
Because it's a theme this month, I've really enjoyed it. Out of all, I don't know why this one has really made me very self-reflective. This theme, it's just odd. There's just such a sense of, I feel, personal responsibility connected to contentment. So it takes power to be content, if you will. But also, it is a power because part of this whole series is to make others content as well. So it's almost like a light or something, that contentment is there and it's just like this light or vibration that kind of melts a bunch of heavy gunk. So I need a lot of power and courage, really, because of the responsibility piece to be content, but then it will be very inspiring for others on a gross and very subtle level, very inspiring for others if I can achieve that really stable contentment.
Well, it'd be lovely to perhaps explore this topic again next week. And so just being mindful of everyone's time. So we'll have a little reflection.
I imagine a state, perhaps it's happening right now, and I don't have to imagine, but whether imagined or real, a state where I am completely comfortable with myself, completely content. And that state is because I have a clear conscience, a clean heart, peaceful mind, and a very respectful awareness of myself. All of this is internal. I could be externally in the most comfortable setting and very uneasy, very restless. Or I could be in a very challenging setting and completely comfortable with myself. This relationship of contentment with the self is a very precious treasure to have. It's worth cultivating, investing in, and if I can achieve it, I can become an instrument to make this world a more comfortable place for others as well. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Sister Judy, and thank you for those for joining with us. So, another warm reminder next week, like this coming Saturday, at the Academy, we have our Learn About Meditation session, 12:15 to 1:30. It's a bit early, as we mentioned, because we're coming close to the holidays. So please visit the website or even the Eventbrite if you would like to register, but you can also just drop in. Also, again, save the date for our New Year's Eve program. It's taking place on December 29th, which is a Sunday. And it's an earlier time. I believe it's 3:30 to 5:30. And we are close to having the registration on the website. So that will be happening in the next couple of days. So please save that date. And that will be at Scarborough. And there are a few other new sessions that are coming up in January. So we'll be sending that out to souls as well. Do you have a regular session? Because we will wait for you to finish your question.
Tuesdays are regular, but you mean something else.
Perhaps maybe we'll just do a quick rundown of regular sessions. On-site regular sessions we have on Mondays and Fridays, 6:30 to 7:30. Both of them are in English at the Inner Peace Center. Practical meditation tends to be a little bit of a chit-chat of a topic with guided meditation. You want to join regularly? Yes. So if you're talking about online, you want to join. Would you like to email us? Yeah. So please write down this email address, calgary@ca.brahmakumaris.org. So if you reach out to us, so we can actually answer your question thoroughly. All right. And so, but there's a lot of other drop-in sessions online and on site. So please visit the website, calgary.brahmakumaris.ca, and our email address is on there as well. Okay. Thank you for joining. Om Shanti.